Welcome to the latest printed press and our special series of Thinking Cypriots, where I'm co-hosting with Yusuf Ahmet, who is a shining beacon in our society lately, doing lots of wonderful things. So we're co-hosting this specific program. Welcome, Yusuf.
Hey, how you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. How about you?
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Forward to the weekend.
Yes, before the weekend. Like I was saying to our audiences, we're co-hosting this series called Thinking Cypriots. And specifically today, our topic is, what does it mean to be Turkish Cypriot living in Britain? And you said that you'd like to speak about the philosophy of identity and what you deem it to be. So I don't know if you'd like to introduce that to us, to our audiences.
Yeah, I think so. It's such a deep question. And what does it mean to be Turkish Cypriot? Even if we just remove living in Britain as well. People probably have different perspectives on what that actually means. When you say I'm Turkish Cypriot, or I'm English, or I'm Turkish, or I'm Greek, or these terms normally have meaning attached to them. And obviously, we also talk about self-identity as well, that I am a person. We think that we're the same person as well. So philosophers have really struggled throughout time to talk about self-identity. Let's go into this a little bit. So if we talk about a tree, so imagine it almost as a seed that's been planted, and now it's grown into a massive tree. And let's say that tree is cut down and chopped up into wood, and let's say that wood is then turned into a table, quite like the one that I've got in front of me right here. At what point does it stop becoming a tree, and when did it become a log, or when did it become a table? And is it not still the same being? Is it not the same material? What defines the end of one point of being to the next? And if we contemplate on that, about us as individuals, as human beings, most of us like to think that we are probably the same person that was born in the hospital many years ago, or the same little boy that hurt their ankle and I've still got the scar to prove it, or the same child that went to school and had all of those experiences and have helped shape me into who I am today. But am I really the same person? Am I really the same individual? There's some philosophers who have gone so far to say that actually the only thing that's remained consistent is our name. And obviously even that can change as well. Because if we're just bodies, if we're just material beings, we're just physical beings, the scientists will tell us that all of the cells in our bodies will change every 7 years or so. So my body is completely different to what it was back then. So if it's our mind, well, our minds are constantly evolving. They're constantly changing. We're learning new things. We might change our mind. We even use this figure of speech, right? To look at things differently and have different perspectives. I'm probably not got the same mentality that I had 10 years ago. I'm sure a lot of our viewers are probably in the same position. So if it's not based on our mind and it's not based on our physical bodies, then what is it about us that remains constant? Some might say memories. It's our memories, it's our experiences. But then one could say, well, we forget things as well as we grow older. Some of my memories when I was in my early 20s about being a child, I've probably forgotten a lot of those now that I'm no longer in my 20s and I'm now 30. So it's interesting. And is this notion of the self, is this just a delusion? Or is this real? Is this, am I still the same person, or do we change? And at what point did my previous being end and my current being start? And when I look into the future, to my future self, what is he going to look like? Is he going to be great if I'm still alive? That is at that point, and how will I think? And what memories will I have at that point? Probably new memories that I would have got, hopefully some good memories. So the point is that it's very difficult to say what makes us us. It's very difficult to define who we are, because we are constantly defining who we are. because we're constantly experiencing the world. We're constantly seeking knowledge. And some of that is obviously experiential knowledge. And forming different relationships, moving around in the world as well. Some people migrate and move from one country to the other. So this is where I want to start to move into more like cultural identity. So when we talk about being Turkish Cypriot, for example, there's obviously something there that we think remains constant amongst this body of people, some kind of distinct culture that we all ascribe to. What is that? What are the key points? And if someone doesn't have one of those, does it mean that they're not Turkish Cypriot? What's the criteria for being Turkish Cypriot, which is hopefully what we're going to reflect upon in this program? What's the criteria? And also, there's many other factors as well in terms of our individual identity. It's also dependent on where we live, the region. Even if we think here in Britain, as part of the last part of this question, some of us might be living in Birmingham or in London. Even in London, as vast and as great as it is, you've got Turkish Cypriots perhaps living in north, living in south, living in east, some living outside of London as well. And even within London, London is a very diverse city. You can have an area which is very affluent, and you could travel maybe 10 minutes down the road by car and be in one of the most deprived areas as well, where people have very different sort of cultural experiences and may even say different words and have different sort of local cultures. What about class? Does class affect who we are? What about languages as well? Languages have such a profound impact on the way that we think as well. So I'll stop there, but I thought that's just some things that we can start to think about when addressing this question. It's a very deep question.
It is a very deep question. I'd like to just quickly touch upon something that you said when you said what makes us Turkish Cypriot, and how we evolve every 7 years. And I truly believe that we do. Like, I feel like when I was very young, growing up, when I was first a child, the first language I learned, actually, funnily enough, was Turkish. But as soon as I went to school, I picked up English, and I totally forgot, in a sense, my Turkish Cypriot identity. It was almost like I was one being when I went to school, and when I came home, I was another being, obviously because of my parents' influence. And then as I got older, I really felt the need to be part of the Turkish Cypriot community, and I connected with them, and then I disconnected from them, and I've now reconnected. So I think you're right, how we evolve. And what is the criteria? And I'd quite like to put that to our audience, what they think the criteria is. I mean, I'm going to specifically talk about language now, and whether we should learn Turkish or whether we shouldn't. I mean, there is this huge pressure on our children to learn Turkish. And a lot of us learn Turkish first before we even learn English. But unfortunately, I mean, I learned Turkish first, but I then went to school and completely forgot the language. Like, literally, when I first walked into the classroom, I did not understand any English. That's the viewpoint. I was born in this country. Wow. But when I first walked into the classroom, I actually have this memory of not understanding anybody. And within a couple of weeks, I'd forgotten Turkish, and I was fully talking in English. And to this day, although I did go to Turkish school, I never did my GCSEs or A-level like my children have done. Basically, I feel very insecure about talking in Turkish. Even my programs, I prefer to do it in English. Sometimes we have live comments and I struggle to read it in Turkish, not because I can't, but because I have this fear that I'm not good enough. And yet I learn Turkish first. That was my mother tongue. You know, there's lots of poems about your mother tongue. And I know that statistically, if you encourage your children to develop and maintain their home language, they become balanced bilinguals. They're more likely to graduate from secondary school with higher grades, to go on to college, to secure better jobs, to earn more money than those who just speak English. This is statistically out there, that if you are bilingual, you're more likely, of course, this isn't for everybody. We can't tie everyone with the same brush, but you are more likely to be successful. And also, I feel like language is part of our heritage, identity. I do feel like as a community, there are certain key words that we say, like, I don't know, hadebe or something, or, certain things that we know about, like, I don't know, babuch or something, or we were having this debate about, is it pipette or is it chirp? like straw that you drink from, and we were all like arguing about that, you know. So it is a bit of an identity thing as well. So it is good to know our language, because that helps us actually know where we've come from and almost sort of root ourselves, like you said, like that plant image that you had at the beginning of the program, where you said, you know, what are your roots? Is if you know the language, then the roots are set, and you almost understand the culture a little bit better, because there's certain mannerisms in the way we speak, certain like patterns in our language, certain ways we pronounce words. And if you understand the language, then you're able to actually really go into the culture and the identity of what it is to be Turkish Cypriot. But at the same time, I think we put a huge amount of pressure on ourselves as to how we speak the language. I think it's not about speaking it perfectly. It's not about having perfect pronunciation. I think what's very important is that we don't pressure our youngsters to speak it absolutely accurately, but we encourage our youngsters to actually learn it and to speak it so that they can, you know, preserve some sort of identity. And it sort of goes on to Turkish schools. When I was younger, Turkish schools, the numbers were much more popular. There is a slight decline, and that is a shame, and we need to sort of bring that up. I don't know what the reason is, because obviously there's a lot of Turkish schools out there. There's lots of people volunteering, because most of the time when people are part of the Turkish schools, they're doing it voluntarily. They're not getting paid for it. The head teachers, the teachers, everybody. But there is some sort of lack of communication between parents and the schools. So we need to be important and try and bring up the numbers. So I don't know if there is anybody out there, because although I'm an educator, I'm not specifically trained in Turkish schools. So if there is anybody out there that would like to come on the program and talk specifically about that and encourage our youngsters to go to Turkish school, then I implore that they do that. But I do think that heritage language is important to communicate values, beliefs and customs. Erim has put a comment up, Yusuf. I think the basis of Turkish Cypriot identity is a connection between what we understand as being an identity created by our forefathers that are based on language, religion, customs and connection with the homeland Cyprus. I mean, what do you think about that?
That's interesting that it's connected to a specific piece of land in the world.
We had this discussion. I knew you were going to say that. I'm quite excited about
we did.
program now.
Well, I think it's really relevant to the question as well, because it says, what does it mean to be Turkish Cypriot living in Britain?
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to say something that's probably going to shock a lot of viewers, because I can speak Turkish and I listen to Turkish music. I watch Turkish TV.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy about my cultural background and the way that I was brought up. But I was born here. My mum was born here, and my grandparents actually came over in their 20s, in the 1960s. But I, despite many people thinking I'm very Turkish Cypriot, I've never been to Cyprus. That's the shocker. I've never been to Cyprus. Does that make me less Turkish Cypriot than other people? Perhaps, in some people's eyes. Do I have to be to that particular bit of land in order to be Turkish Cypriot, or is Turkish Cypriot something that transcends land? Is it something which is, you know, in our hearts? It's been a little bit more metaphorical. I don't know. I mean, and also when we talk about that land, obviously there is a huge political situation in Cyprus. And a lot of people associate northern Cyprus with being Turkish Cypriot and southern Cyprus with being Greek Cypriot. But there are people from the south that had lived there, and that's where their forefathers were actually from. And they're Turkish Cypriot, and vice versa as well. There are some Greek Cypriots who were from Famagusta, who are no longer living there. And that's where all of their generations after generations had lived before them. So is North Cyprus really the land that represents and identifies Turkish Cypriot culture? That's probably a little bit unfair for those that are from the south. And also, I think the point on language as well, Aishan, is a really good point, because I think language is such a powerful thing. And when you speak in a certain language, you think a certain way, and a language can tell you a lot about how a society, how a people think, just the way that they structure their words, some of the tones, yeah, there is a dialect. There is a Turkish Cypriot dialect which is distinct from you know, sort of mainland Turkey or from other Turkic nations. And there is also, I think, like it's not just an accent. It's almost some of the words that are used,
Yeah.
some of the jokes.
Yeah. We're quite a humorous culture, aren't we, Turkish Cypriots? Our language is quite funny, I find. Like we've got,
I think so.
Yeah. So there's a lot of personality in our language, but you've got to understand it to almost be part of it. I think it's very important for us not to lose our language, you know. Obviously, it's going to evolve over the years. Every language does evolve over the years. But I think for our children, for them not to know Turkish at all is a shame. But what I want to put out there is that they shouldn't feel the pressure to know it perfectly. You know, I would go to Cyprus. I mean, you said something very interesting about Cyprus, and I'm quite happy to go into that, to be honest with you, because there's reasons why certain people can't go to Cyprus. And I think things need to change. The government needs to change certain things so it becomes more accessible for our generation to go there. You know, there's lots of political reasons why, but, you know, that's maybe for another program, but we can touch upon it. But I think it's very important that our children are encouraged to speak it in whichever way they can, but to speak it, to access our language so that it's not forgotten. If it's going to evolve, if we're going to have bits of English in there, we've got bits of French, haven't we? Pantolon, douche. Why can't we have bits of English in there? I don't see why not. Why is it that we've got a certain accent? And we're, you know, because when I went to Cyprus, I was embarrassed. For a good week, I would be a mute. I wouldn't speak. And it's only when I started to feel a little bit more comfortable, I would start to speak. But at the end of the day, why should I feel like that? You know, at the end of the day, that's my dialect. I should be proud of it, you know. And when you go to Turkish school, sometimes people say to you, oh, you're not speaking Turkish properly, this is the way you should speak it. But what is properly? What is speaking Turkish properly? You know, even in Turkey, there are different regions where there are different accents, and yet there isn't that pressure of speaking a certain way. So I think we need to do away with that, for one thing, so that it encourages our youngsters to actually just speak the language, whichever way they do. Yes, of course, there is a standard, like, you know, like when you have the Queen's English, there will be, you know, a standard Turkish that newsreaders will have in Turkey. Of course, there are standards to everything, but why should we be discouraged from speaking it whichever way we're speaking it? I think we need to embrace it and allow our youngsters to just, you know, access it at least, so that we keep that on. I mean, aren't we getting lots and lots of comments now? So we need to start looking at them, actually. Abby Hussein, who's...
Can I just add?
Yeah,
go on. Just add one thing? Sorry,
yeah.
And that is, this is probably going to sound a little bit weird, or perhaps some of our viewers will relate to this, but
I love your ideas. Say it.
Well,
say it.
my family are from Lodogina, and they not only speak Turkish, they also speak Greek. And I'm the only one in my family that cannot speak Greek fluently, and I regret that, actually. Now, some people might think, "What do you need to speak Greek for?" Well, that's part of my. If we're talking about our forefathers and what they did and how they spoke and how they lived their lives, that's also an important part of my culture, which I haven't tapped into. And actually, when I do understand a bit of Greek, when people do say things in Greek, it hits me in a different way. It affects me in a different way. But that's also part of my cultural identity. And I wouldn't remove that. But yeah, sorry.
No, I totally agree. My father-in-law was in a mixed village and he spoke Greek. My husband, unfortunately, can't speak Greek. He can only speak Turkish and English. I think that's a shame. Like I said, statistically, the more language you can speak, the more intelligent you become, the more things you can access, the better you can access jobs, and a better living. I think 100%. And if it's part of your identity, we can't go away from that. There was lots of mixed villages, and you know what? They got along. We've got some wonderful stories. There's terrible stories, but there's also stories of people saving each other, neighbours in you know, during the war, actually saving each other. I mean, yes, there is a lot of negative things, but there's also positive things as well. Where human beings have come together. Let's not forget that. And I think it's very important, Yusuf, that you make that point, that yes, you should be encouraged to learn Greek as well as Turkish, if that's, you know, where you came from. If your village was a mixed village, you know, I think it's a shame. You know, like I said, my father-in-law can speak it, but yet my husband can't. It is a shame, you know, because we've lost that. We've lost a part of our identity on the father's side. Abby Hussein has put, our custom, culture, tradition, language, and our deep-rooted family values is what makes us Turkish Cypriot. Family is the backbone of Turkish Cypriot identity. What do we think about that, Yusuf? Do you think family is important?
Absolutely. I think that's where we learn a lot of our culture. Some people say that culture is what is handed down generation by generation, as opposed to just a system of beliefs and practices. And so normally the main source of your cultural identity will come from your upbringing, from your family. And each family will have almost like a different family culture. And that will probably dictate your wider perception of what Turkish Cypriot culture means. So let me just expand on that. So I always had an image of what it meant to be Turkish Cypriot, and that perception has been challenged over the last few years. So for me, a lot of my family and my extended family, very hardworking people, you know, came to this country to make a difference, and even back in Cyprus, very hardworking, and was sort of renowned for that. And I just thought that's part and parcel of being Turkish Cypriot. I think having mixed more with the community in different parts of London as well, and understanding,
isn't it? That's what you've learned.
Yeah, and I think that there are other people who are probably less ambitious and less motivated, and there's almost like a different, not class, but a different culture within the Turkish Cypriot culture, which is almost the opposite, where you know they've come over here, they feel very comfortable, they don't really feel the need to work. I've even heard stories of people not really having that much money over here, but will go and get loans to go and show off in Cyprus and then come back and pay off those loans. Like to show off but it's completely different to how I was brought up, and I just assumed that my upbringing was representative of wider Turkish Cypriot culture. And the last few years in particular have been very telling in that actually there are very different Turkish Cypriots who think very differently. That I was also brought up to think that being very clean was part of our culture. We have like this phrase buz gibi olsun, like it almost like be like ice, like it has to be very clean.
Yeah, my mother and my mum are OCD for sure. Anyway,
my family are as well, and I think that's a good thing, though, right? But at the same time, I've met other people or heard of other people that aren't, and that surprised me. That was an eye opener, because I thought that was part of our culture.
I guess that's what makes us human. And I guess what we need to realize is there's a lot of us. There's a lot of Turkish Cypriots out there. We're not as smaller a community as we think. And hence, I think why you've realized that there's so many factions and differences, because actually there's quite a lot of us, surprisingly. We seem to always in our minds see us as a small community, but I think actually we're quite a big community with variants of, like you said, class, culture, beliefs, you know, from right to left. But I think what's important, and during these COVID times, I've tried to really put this point across, and so have you, Yusuf. You've been an inspiration with all of your programs and everything that you're doing, you know, trying to teach everything, like, you know, to do with our religion and culture and everything. You're a beacon in our society, honestly. I'm so proud of everything that you've done. I just feel like we need to bring all of these things together. And like you said, I think it's a good thing to be clean and to think about your personal hygiene, because obviously that will give you a longer life. You'll have better presentation, you know, things like that. But obviously, you know, there are lots of reasons behind why people perhaps may not be. It could be because mental health issues. It could be family background. Like you said, you know, in your, like Abi Hussein said, the backbone of Turkish Cypriot culture is family. But not everybody is in a functional family who's from a Turkish Cypriot background. There are lots of dysfunctional families who've got lots of different issues. And what we need to do now is speak out and help those families and have outreach programs and support for them, because nobody in this world is perfect. Lots of things happen. We are all human, and we need to actually open up and talk about a lot of the taboo subjects that we don't, we've not really in the past encouraged each other to talk about, so we can support each other. For example, for mental health, like I said, family issues, drugs, all sorts of things that affect a family unit. And like you said, disperse a family and disperse those values and those beliefs and make people go down the wrong path. So we need to be a bit more open-minded and a bit more at the forefront of actually talking about some of these taboo subjects, I think, so that we can help those pockets in our society and in our community that are struggling. Because obviously, I mean, you said it, and I hope this is okay for me to say, but you've come from a single parent background, but your mother, the story you've told me, she's such a role model to you, a strong woman who worked very, very hard, who brought up her son and daughter, I believe, yes, you've got a sister, to the most wonderful way. But yet you're a single parent family. That's not the typical Turkish Cypriot setup. But yet look at you, you're an absolute success. And that's it. That's what we need to hear. We need to hear that actually, it doesn't always fit the norm or what people expect, but you can still be successful and you can still be Turkish Cypriot, even with a slightly different background. We've got more comments. Yusuf, I don't know if you want to take some of these.
Yeah, please.
Next one.
Yeah. Regis, whilst I can speak Turkish, it's very broken. I regret not being able to learn it fluently, because you can utilize this when connecting with Turkish professionals in the UK and the wider world. Being bilingual is very beneficial when trying to progress in any career. Absolutely. I think we shouldn't underestimate the power of knowing another language. And how that can help you in your career and getting to where you need to be. I think we've got, they call us Londras.
Yeah, that's in Cyprus. That's the thing, isn't it? I don't feel like I belong in Cyprus. I don't feel like I belong here. My identity is a little bit lost. And I think that's why we have this need. Like, this is why I have the need to help my community. This is why I feel the need to bring my community together, because actually it helps me in a weird kind of way. I've got to admit it. It helps me find my identity. And so this is something we need to think about. I don't know what you would say about that.
So what, let's probe into it a little bit more. So why do you not feel, like at home at Cyprus? Why do you feel different to Cyprus? Because you've been to Cyprus, I haven't. What's different about there than here? Or why do you feel less?
Well, first of all, the language, I don't speak like them. I totally speak differently. And you know what? It's not that they speak better than me, by the way. I find some of the slang that they use is a lot more aggressive. Like, I feel like we speak a bit more, I don't know, maybe it's the British in us, but I feel like we're a little bit more reserved. I feel like in Cyprus, because they've not had that fear of losing their identity, they've actually evolved a lot quicker and changed, whereas we've almost stayed the same and sort of stayed in a little bit of a bubble. I feel like I was very protected by my parents. So not only do I speak differently, but I feel I act differently. I feel I'm a lot more timid in comparison to people in Cyprus. I feel like they've got more get up and go. They're a little bit more, at one with themselves, and they feel a bit freer. I feel like, I'm a little bit more reserved, for one thing. Politically, certain things I don't agree with, like my children now at a certain age will have to go and get a certain paper because they're of a certain age, but yet they can't vote. Like, things like that don't sit well with me. And I think we need to have the right to vote. But obviously, if we do, then we might outnumber the people in Cyprus. So I understand their viewpoint as well. But this is something maybe for another program. But I do feel a little bit unsure about that. And I know for certain generations, they actually have to pay money not to go into the army as well. And you just think, well, if they're going to go into the army, then they should have the right to vote. So this is also a little bit of a thing that it doesn't sit right with me. I feel like there needs to be a bit of a solution. Obviously, I don't like the fact that we're not recognised across the world. I don't know how much it affects me, but it certainly affects my parents, who have to get on a plane, then get off a plane, have to walk through a very busy airport in Istanbul, which is very complicated now because there's a new airport, and then have to get back on a plane. I think that's a huge burden on my elderly parents who just want to go back to their homeland. So I have certain issues where I feel like I can't identify with Cyprus, but then I have a longing to go there. And when I go there, I mean, I've had experiences there where at night we've gone to the Turtle Beach and we let out the baby turtles into the water. I've gone to the Han in Lefkoşa and I've done like all the touristy things, and I feel extremely proud when I go into Malta, where my parents are from, and I stand in front of the Jami and I hear the ezan, and there's a big tree that's been there for many, many centuries. I think I feel this warmth inside me. So it must mean that I feel like I identify with that country, that there is some connection that I have there. So I feel very warm to it, but at the same time, I feel like I couldn't live there. I'd have to live here.
Do you feel like they accept you as being Turkish Cypriot? Do you feel like they're warm to you, the people, or you don't? No. Or do you feel some people do and some people don't? Or
yeah, I mean, I think my husband's family are lovely people, and they do make me feel extremely welcome there. But generally, friends, or generally when I go into a restaurant, no. I mean, for one thing, I don't look Turkish. So I'm constantly being like asked what I am. Am I English? And do I talk Turkish? I mean, I've had that all my life. So I somehow don't fit into the typical look of a Turkish person anyway. So, you know, already just from the outset, my identity is questioned wherever I go. So no, I don't generally, but I think family accept me because they've gotten to know me. Obviously, when you're part of a family, they accept you for who you are. It doesn't matter whether you speak with an accent or you don't speak with an accent, your family accept you. So I mean, that's more of a family thing. But certainly no, I don't think I belong there. But then here, I'll start talking in English and people will say, "Are you Australian? Where are you from?" Tang to your, and I'm like, "No, I was born here." They're like, "Yeah, but you've got some sort of accent. What is that? What is that? Is it from my parents? I've got some sort of accent. Is it because I'm from North London? I don't really know, but I get that a lot as well." So there you go. It's very confusing. I don't know if anyone else out there can relate to my story, but how about you? Do you feel like Turkish?
Well, I've not been to Cyprus, remember, but I do feel like because my grandparents came over in the 60s, they brought Cyprus from the 60s with them over here. And so we've been brought up in that manner. But Cyprus isn't how it was in the 60s. It's moved forward. The culture's changed. It's evolved. It's different. And so I think a lot of the Cypriots over here are probably the way Cyprus may have used to have been. And I think out there, in some respects, I don't know if what the right word is. I don't know if it's modern, but I feel like it's changed. Whether that's for the better or the worse, I don't know.
They're freer maybe to change, whereas we are a little bit more wanting to preserve our culture. And certainly, like the way my parents brought me up, I was very sort of protected and, you know, taken everywhere. You know, I didn't get on a bus until I was like 21 years old and things like that. Like, you know, I was very protected. And I don't know whether it's like that in Cyprus. Is that because they feel like there is less crime out there? But it can't be. There must be crime out there. I shouldn't think that it would be the case, but you know, I do feel like our parents were more protective of us here, and hence I feel like that about my children as well. Like I feel the same, irrelevant of whether they're boys or girls, because I have boys, but I still feel very protective of them. I still fear for them to sort of walk about the streets. I don't like them to take public transport. I'd like to take them to and fro. I'd like to give them freedom. I want them to know things and be independent, of course, but there's a time and place for it. And, you know, as they're growing up, you want to ensure that they're safe and their well-being is sound and that they're respectable and they have manners. And I always make a point when people come to my house, my children have to be part of whatever social gathering I have. I want them to say hello to everybody, you know, give their salam. For me, that is very, very important, but not everyone thinks like that. So I think I've definitely got a lot of sort of traditional values, but at the same time, I'm also very open-minded and very open to people talking about their issues and very open to help people and not, you know, shy away from taboo subjects at all, because, you know, we're all in it together. And like I said, we're all human and we're all able to make mistakes. So, you know, there's no harm in that. And especially from my religious belief, and you've been helping me with that, Yusuf, it's the fact that Allah is very merciful. And, you know, I think we need to focus on that as a culture and through our faith, that actually, you know, you can make a mistake, but as long as you can rectify it and learn from it, you know, God forgives us for our sins, sort of thing. It's a very forgiving religion and culture. Suzanne has put some lovely things about you. Yusuf, you're probably more Turkish Cypriot than the Turkish Cypriots who are there and been there, because you've learnt about the motherland and your heritage. And I agree with that. What would you say to that? Do you feel more Turkish Cypriot?
Whatever that means, probably. Yeah, I do. I mean,
Yeah.
I do identify as being Turkish Cypriot, and I'm very familiar with the history of my village. I mean, there's a great guy from our village called Ismail Velli, absolute legend. And because of him, I was actually able to trace back my family tree and a lot of the village's family tree back to the 1700s. We've learned so much more about our cultural heritage because of that man, as well as others as well who are also doing great things. But yeah, I mean, it comes back to this point around upbringing, I think, as well, right? So, as I said, we grew up in the car when I was younger, listening to Turkish music.
Yeah.
I remember when I was young, I'd be like, Mum, I want to listen to Ibo Abi. And she'd be playing like Ibrahim Tatlıses in the car, because I was just so accustomed to that, right? It's not that I don't listen to English music as well. It's just that that's also, that's another part of who I am. And I can really relate to Turkish music sometimes. I feel like it pulls different strings on my heart, and I can connect with that in a different way. It can be very emotional. And some of the words will impact me a lot more. I mean, when my mum's angry at me, it'll be in Turkish, right? Or Greek as well. Like, I definitely get it in Greek a lot too, and that's probably the Greek that I do know.
You know the harsh stuff. You know the telling off stuff. Then that's the start.
Oh, yeah. When I'm naughty, my mum's so I know. Yeah, which basically means which means I'm gonna kill you. That's what it wishes by. So I do know the phrases that I probably shouldn't know, but that's because perhaps I was too naughty as a child.
You're a good boy.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the point is that I think that if I was to go to Cyprus, I would probably be very shocked, and I will do, inshallah, one day. But I have spoken to people in Cyprus. I've had FaceTime calls and all the rest of it. A lot of them are shocked that I can talk Turkish. Some of them say, and I've had people over here as well say to me, "You're more Turkish Cypriot than me, and I was born out there," and stuff like that. Not that I know what that means. Not that that's a good thing. Not necessarily. It's just we probably have a very different perception of what it means to be Turkish. So let me give you an example, Aisha. Something probably a little bit controversial today, but I don't eat pork. It's just something I don't eat. It's something that we never have as a family. That's how I was brought up, and I know a lot of Turkish Cypriots who don't eat pork, particularly from my village in Cyprus. That said, again, over the last few years, I've come to realize there's a lot of Cypriots that do eat pork, and not just here in London. That's not because they've been mixing with English people over here. In Cyprus, they eat pork. That's something that happens. To me, yeah, you'll have it. You'll go to certain restaurants or whatever,
and it will be, actually, to say, I must admit, I've seen it in Turkey as well. They have pork. Well, yeah, I know. Yeah. We don't eat it either. I've never been allowed to eat it.
I'm not judging people who do. No. I mean, people can eat what they want. But the point I'm trying to make here is, to me, that was almost like it was something that was embedded within our culture, and that's clearly changed. So the fact that has changed means that there's a lot of other things that have changed as well. And I do think your point earlier around, we were brought up here, and that's probably impacted our cultural understanding. And when we go there, we speak a different way. Perhaps it's more polite. Perhaps it's the more British thing. Like, I wouldn't go to someone and say, "How much money do you earn?" Right? Because no, I wouldn't. Right?
It's true. There is this materialism. Well, there's this idea that in London there's more opportunities. Hence, when people, it's like they get 2 + 2 and they make 10, because there's more opportunities. People think that there's more money opportunities, but actually there's more opportunities, but you have to work hard to make money wherever you are, in whichever country. Let me make that clear.
Yeah, and it's not even just that, but it's just there's certain things that you probably wouldn't say to somebody because
Just not.
How can I put it? Like in Turkish, you'd say, you know, saygı göstermen lazım. Like you have to be respectful towards somebody. There's just certain things that you just don't say. It's being polite. It's having edeb. It's having manners, basic manners, or what we would consider to be basic manners. Yeah,
Yeah.
What we would consider to be that. But perhaps people out there, and it's not all people. And again, we are generalizing as well. I mean, there's different types of
100%
exactly.
not.
But there are some people out there that will just say things very bluntly, very frankly, you know, straight to you.
I just have amnesia when people ask me that. I just say, I don't know. People have asked me, and I'm like, I don't know. Who knows?
Well, I'm probably more polite than me.
I pretend like I've had amnesia, like I've hit my head against a rock, and I just forgot because I'm not going to answer a question like that. It's just too much invasion of my privacy, really. So yeah.
It's not polite. I would probably turn around and say,
not anyone else. As long as I pay my bills and I feed my family, I'm all right. You know, that's it, really. Yeah, I think so. I think that is certain manners, but I think with anybody, let's not say specifically Turkish Cypriot. I think it's just generally, if anybody asks you personal questions like that when they've only known you for 2 minutes, it's an invasion of privacy. And I think a message to young people out there, at least, because maybe after a certain age you can't change who you are, but I suppose if you're younger, that's a big no-no. I think you need to respect people's privacy and people's space and know what you can ask and what you can't ask, because it's just common manners, isn't it, really? It's just information you don't really need to know about somebody. You know, money is important up to a certain point, but happiness and real things, and I think especially over this COVID time, we've learned that are priceless. You can't put a price tag on happiness. You can't put a price tag. While we're getting him back, I'm going to actually just read a comment. Gulay has, but we don't feel like we belong there and we don't feel like we belong here. Where do we really belong? Us British-born Turkish Cypriots have a very unique identity. I think that's the answer, isn't it? We do have a unique identity. And we need to embrace it, and we need to work as a community, and we need to pull together. There's so many amazing people in the Turkish Cypriot community and the Turkish community, like you said, that we need to utilize each other, I think. I don't know what you think, Yusuf, about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think the fact that our grandparents or parents or great-grandparents came to this country to give us opportunities that they didn't have is remarkable. And a lot of them have come here and achieved many great things, which we as a community can be very proud of. I'm certainly very proud of my family and their achievements. And I know many others that have come here and have had an influence, an impact, left a legacy in British culture, British society. You know, I know people who've got MBEs, who've gone and studied and got PhDs, and not just got those things, but actually actively contributing towards the betterment of society, and that should be applauded. There are probably others as well, though, as I've come to realize over the last few years, which are more dead weight. No, and we have to be aware of that. But I still believe that that's the minority. I still believe that the overwhelming majority of Turkish Cypriots who have come here to live a better life have done well. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about they've come over here and they've you know, kept their morals, kept their values, and are good people, and are known, you know, for expressing insanlık as per our previous program, and are known by their neighbors and have integrated well into society. They haven't been alienated or alienated themselves. And they've become part and parcel of society over here, and that's a very positive thing. There's other cultures that have come here who've struggled with that.
I'm proud of our Turkish Cypriot community, to be honest with you. Obviously, we have our flaws, as any community would have, but I actually am proud. I mean, Abi Hussein said we have different accents in the United Kingdom. Every region is proud of their accent, exactly. And then Suzanne Ibrahim has put, Aishan, it's true. I've always used to get told my accent was funny, and also the way we talk in English is different. Object, subject, verb. We talk different way round in Turkish. Yes, devrik cümle derler. Bana da aynen, which gets a bit confusing. But you know what? I think we should be proud of it. I've started to, in a lot of my programs where the need is, when we connect from Cyprus, I've started to speak in Turkish. Why not? Because I am fluent. I'm actually fluent in it. I can read and write fluently. It's just my fear that I have this accent that stops me from actually communicating. And I think, why should I? As I'm maturing now, I think I'm becoming more confident in myself and more self-assured and tuning in on my identity. Like Gulay said, we have a unique identity within this country. And I think we need to find out how many Turkish Cypriots are actually in this community in the United Kingdom, so that we can actually get some statistics. But being Turkish Cypriot in Britain is a unique identity. I think we're not part Cyprus, we're not part of here, but we're actually Turkish Cypriots living in Britain. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think we are unique, or do we need to belong to the homeland?
Well, what does it mean to say homeland? As I said before, some people's homeland was in the south. Some people haven't ever been to that land. This is the homeland. This is home for some people. For me, probably. If you want to talk about homeland, I mean, my ancestors came from Turkey. As much as people wouldn't like to admit it, a lot of Turkish Cypriots did actually come from Turkey. That could, if we're talking about going back, how far back do we have to go before it's home? But let me ask you this. But let me ask you this, Aisha. It's probably a difficult question, perhaps a controversial question.
Controversial questions.
What would you say to some of the youngsters today, right? Who have children? Perhaps they don't give them Turkish Cypriot names. Perhaps those children don't speak Turkish at all. Perhaps they don't go to Turkish weddings or really engage much with the Turkish community. Perhaps they've never been to Cyprus as well. Are these people Turkish Cypriot? If we were to conduct the survey, would they class it? What's the criteria? What makes somebody Turkish Cypriot and somebody not Turkish Cypriot? It can't be pork. We've obviously established that. No. It can't be your name. I mean, what is it?
Okay. Genetically, if their father or their mother was born in Cyprus, then yes, and they speak the language of Turkish, then genetically they're Turkish Cypriot. But when we talk about identity, it's a whole different ballgame. And that's up to the individual, really. I mean, I'm not saying, everyone has to identify with being Turkish Cypriot, not at all. But what I'm saying is that we need to preserve our community and our culture. That's how I feel. I brought up my children to speak Turkish. They speak it better than me. They've gone to Turkish school. My son, who is 15 years of age, has just completed his A-level Turkish, something that I couldn't do. And I really felt very passionate about him being able to do that. With the thanks of Turkish Atatürk School, they supported me. I'm not, although I can read and write fluently in Turkish, I haven't got the ability to do Turkish A-level. But my son has achieved it, and he's the next generation down. So, for me, that's a proud moment. But not everyone feels like that. Not everyone feels like that's necessary, and that's okay as well. I have no judgment on that, but I do feel like we must preserve our identity, because otherwise it will get lost. We'll be like the Aztecs, in a few generations to come, and I think that would be a great shame. But I think definitely if you have some sort of connection with Cyprus, where one of your grandparents or your parents were born in Cyprus and they spoke the Turkish language, then definitely your genetics are Turkish Cypriot. But identity is a whole different ballgame. Identity is what you identify yourself to be connected to. That's a personal decision, I feel like. But I personally feel very Turkish Cypriot. Although I'm confused as to my identity. Do I belong in Cyprus? Do I belong here? Inside of me, in my heart, I am Turkish Cypriot. Now, how do I define that? I could say all sorts of things like I don't eat pork, I try and, I watch Turkish disease. I love, that Bin Yüzyıl, Hürrem Sultan. My nickname is Hürrem Sultan anyway. Everyone calls me that because I'm so bossy. And I look Russian, I think. I don't know. But, do you know what I mean? So what does that make me Turkish Cypriot? I'm not really sure. But I just feel it inside of me. And I wanted to pass that on to my children. That's essentially all I can say about it, really. All the little nitty gritties of what I do to feel Turkish Cypriot only reassures me at the end of the day. It makes no difference to anybody else. It's a personal journey for me to make me know who I am. And that's it. That's the key to being mentally stable, to having a healthy lifestyle, is coming to grips with who you are and loving yourself. As long as I love myself, then I should be okay, and I think a lot of us forget to give ourselves that self-love. And I feel like the way I found my self-love was to start getting involved with my community. That's how I sort of found myself again, because there was a spell where I sort of did lose touch of who I was as an individual, as a woman. And I feel now that I found myself again because I've gotten more involved in the Turkish Cypriot community. And it's, I always wanted to present, and it's through my community that I've been able to do that. And it makes me very, very proud. So that's it. That's the only way I can explain it, really. I don't know if it makes sense to anybody, but that's it, really. It's a personal journey.
Yeah, I think so. I also identify with the community here as well, in Britain. So I'm also engaged with British politics. I'm also watch English TV shows and dramas. I have a Netflix account, and that's also part of who I am, right?
Addicted to that Netflix.
Yeah, and it's not just Turkish things I'm watching on Netflix. No. I mainly watch English on Netflix, if I'm honest. But then some of the best programs I've seen are in Turkish as well. So it's almost like a combination. You're right. It's this fusion that we're not quite Turkish Cypriot just from Cyprus. Whether that's in the 60s or whether that's today, neither of them actually do we identify with. Nor are we just British either, because we do have that fusion between the two, and it almost gives us a unique identity. It gives us a unique identity, even in our food, right? I mean, sometimes when I cook like an English breakfast, so if I just put eggs on toast, I'll be adding nane on it, I'll be adding mint on it and stuff. Because
oh gosh, I'd like to try that. That sounds very nice.
It's just almost like, if you think a bit of like a dish, if we're a dish, the spices and the herbs on top, it's a combination of both. And so that's, I always relate everything back to food. I'm such a fatty. But my point
man, that's just what men do. Sorry, now I'm really stereotyping. Now all the men are going to messaging me saying, what are you saying I should? But men, food, happiness.
Yeah, I think definitely. To be fair, we haven't really spoken about food that much on this show, and food is a very important part of our culture.
We're not getting Djemal on here. If we're going to talk about food, she's like the expert of food. Right, we've got lots of comments. Gulai is personally messaging. We're saying comments. The next one is, I think, for you. So Erin Meto, where he starts with not at all. Yusuf.
Not at all, Yusuf. You always give me the long comments. That's what this is. So you have a connection through forefathers. A connection to land could be via forefathers. Cyprus as a whole, not Turkish Republic of North Cyprus, as Turkish Cypriots lived in the whole of Cyprus. Correct. A person born in the UK whose forefathers are not from Cyprus would not have a connection with the island. I think the word Cypriot within the Turkish Cypriot identity is important, as it connects to the landmass rather than stating Turkish, which I feel is quite different. However, we all must agree. Erin, and Erin is absolutely fantastic, by the way, and I think he is actually the beacon in our community, and definitely an inspiration to people at my age. But I understand where Erin is coming from on that. But for me, and there'll be a lot of people in here who probably differ with me. If people say, what are you, where are you from, what's your ethnicity, I just say Turkish. I don't specify Cypriot, because I don't know. I mean, for me, I know there's some Turkish Cypriots that feel very disconnected with Turkey.
Mm.
And it's like, oh, there are whole different people and all the rest of it. But I don't. I see us all as Turkish. We're different types of Turkish people. It's a little bit like Britain is made up of English and Scottish and Welsh, etc. But we're all British. And for me, we all come under that banner of Turkish, if you like. That's how I feel, and that's how I express my identity. But others won't. Others would say, no, I am Cypriot. And that's fine as well. Like, I'm not judging. It's just we all refer to different terms and stuff. And the reality is, when I say Turkish, that's probably a loaded term. People might automatically associate things about me which aren't true about me. The reality is, I was born in England. I was born in South London. That's where I'm from. I'm a chef boy. So, you know.
I'm a North London girl, so.
Yeah. And
South.
Exactly. And obviously the South is better. But my point is that
mind you, my nan's from Peckham, so I can't even cuss the South because half my family are from there, the other half from North. So I'm like a mixture.
To be fair,
they're both as good as each other. There you go.
Yeah, they are. And half of my family are in North as well. And I love North. And North has certain things about it. It has a very different feel, you know, and that's changed as well. I mean, if you went to Green Lanes when I was younger, and you went to some of the restaurants there and you ate food there, very different to today. You know, that whole experience is very different too, I find. So our culture here, British Cypriots, if you like, let's coin that term. British Cypriots have evolved, have changed, and will continue to change. Maybe something we should also touch upon, maybe to end with, I don't know how we're doing with time, but what's the future?
We've got so many comments though. We've only gotten through half of them. We still got to get through all the others. If we can go over a bit. Susanna's, but I think in general, us Turkish Cypriots are very clean. It does come down to family values. I agree with that. I think generally we are, to be honest with you. I think, you know, most Turkish families, you know, when you go to the house, you take off the shoes, everyone's washing their hands. Colonia has become, the statistics have gone up. How many people are buying Colonia? But yet for us culturally, we've always had it. So, you know, right, I've been told by Gulai we can go over time. So that's good news. We can go over time. You and me put together, we can just talk for 5 hours. Yes, sir.
I could talk for England and Cyprus now.
Right. Don't worry about it. That's what
everyone's probably thinking, why weren't these people just sus? We're not going to sus. We're going to keep going.
We haven't even gone into your impressions yet, but we won't touch upon that ever. We won't ever touch. Yusuf has got the best sense of humour, I'm telling you, people, but that's for another day. Ertan Karapazlı has said, we are a huge community with a weak centre. Okay, we need to strengthen the centre or else we will start breaking up. Okay, the disintegration of our community has already started. We need to start now. Okay, so we need to pull the community together. I understand there are pockets of weakness. I hear what he's saying, Ertan. And again, another person in our community who's working really hard. He was on my program recently with the wonderful things that he does. He's a journalist. So yeah, you know, another great professional in our community. So yeah, I mean, it's true. We do need to pull together, but what's the secret? How do we pull together? I mean, what do we do to pull together? That's the question.
I feel like we need to connect, as you said, right? We need to find out what those core principles are that make us who we are, and we need to tap into that as a community. And I think we're already doing it. You know, I mean, we've got Erim is someone who's been writing comments, as well as a lot of other people. I haven't seen all the comments, but there's people who've been doing some amazing things, especially during this very difficult time that we've been going through recently. And they have literally been at the front, at the forefront, representing us and doing amazing things in our community, and that makes me very proud, to say the least. So I think it's down to every individual, right? Everyone might want to. So there's some people who've come to this country and just left that all behind them, and you know, I'm going to be English now. That's fine if that's how they want to be. And you know, there's some people who
like that. Otherwise we'll be lost. We'll be like the Aztecs. I keep saying that. We don't want to be in a community. So I think, yeah, that's fine for some people, but I think it's a shame. I'll be honest. I'll put my personal opinion on that. It's always good to know where you come from. It, like you said, I love that analogy, that metaphor that you used at the beginning of the program about the tree. no tree can grow and become great, like a great oak tree that you see in the park, unless it's got some good solid roots. And your roots are an array of things, but your ethnic identity is one of those roots. And I think it keeps you strong, and it sort of harnesses you and anchors you into who you are. And once you know who you are, you become more confident, you start to love yourself more, and you are able to give more to other people. It always comes from within. You know, you've got to know who you are first before you can give to others. You can't be giving and not actually nurturing yourself as well. So I think it's important that we do connect to our identity. And I think Elim's got a point there. You know, at the end of the day, if you go back and one of your ancestors has come from Cyprus, specifically, you know, where they're Turkish speaking as well within there, although there's Greek speaking as well, but also there is elements of Turkish speakers there, then your roots are Turkish Cypriot. And it would be nice to find out about it. Whether you go back to the homeland or not, Yusuf, I mean, I know you keep saying you've never been there, but you know so much about it and you connect to people out there. You can't say that you haven't connected to them. You're very unique in that sense. And I think that's why you know who you are, because yes, you haven't gone there, and inshallah one day you will see Cyprus, but you've connected to a lot of people there. Like, I feel like you've got a connection. You know who you are. You're a very solid individual inside. And I think that makes a difference.
I'm smiling because I'm worried that if I do go to Cyprus, I'll come back. That's it. No more Kıbrıslı. I'm English. I've seen what I've needed to see. No more. But no,
yeah,
I'm joking.
We're gonna have to be like, we're gonna have to, like, you know, like, you're gonna have to be like that VIP person. We're gonna take you places, and then anything that's gonna upset, we're gonna be like, quick, go, quick, run.
That's
like,
ending.
Yeah, we'll have to, like, cushion it for you. No, but I think there'll be. You know what? Unfortunately, when I first went back after numerous years, after my childhood, and I went as an adult, there were things that I was very disappointed with. But there was other things that I thought, oh, wow, how wonderful. Unfortunately, with life, you get disillusioned and you also have hope as well. It's just part and parcel of everything.
But
I'm sure there'll be lots of things you hate, but what can you do?
No, but just to be really clear, because I think I hope I haven't given off this impression that I have very high expectations and I'm expecting a perfect culture. Absolutely not. Everyone's different, and I'm sure, you know, England's not perfect. No country in the world is perfect. Everything has its flaws, and there's some beautiful things about Cyprus, and there's some not so beautiful things about Cyprus as well. And we just need to be very honest about that. I'm not in any way, shape, or form expecting this, and you know,
and no one thinks that about you. You're a very humble person, so no one would think that.
Come on, right? Should we? We've got so many comments.
So I say, mashallah, mashallah, which is a lovely comment. And Gulai's put, Turkish citizens living in the UK are able to defer their army service to the age of 35, and then they have the option to pay or only do it for 6 months. Why don't we have something like this for our Turkish Cypriot boys and young men?
You're asking the wrong person here, because look, I think Turkey has come a long way in the last 10-15 years, and I feel like I feel like they care a lot about the Turks that are living outside of Turkey, those that are living here, those that are living in Germany and other places. And you spoke about this earlier, Aisha, and you said, you know, these people can vote. Even if they're not in Turkey, they can vote over here. In Cyprus, we're not that advanced. We're not that far ahead. And we want to be independent. And if people...
We should be part of that. Sorry. I know we may... The problem with that is, I know why they don't want to do it. It's because there's more of us here than there is there. But if they want us to really feel part of Cyprus, then we should have the right to vote. Like we pay for the army service, and we have to get those papers for our children, we should have the right to vote. That's how I feel. But anyway, again, lots of people may disagree with me, but that's my personal viewpoint.
They will, but if we're Turkish Cypriot, we can't just be Turkish Cypriot when it suits other people, right? If we're Turkish Cypriot and, you know, or bizim topramızdı, if that land is our land, and that country is our country, and you even said something earlier, you said, we are not recognized. The fact that you include yourself within that, like you've identified with that land, it's part of your identity. So if you're that connected to it, But the reality is, do you get a say in how it operates or anything that goes on over there? You probably don't. So it's when is this all politically driven? Is this language, emotive language, to make you feel that you'll have a connection there when in fact you actually really don't? They just need you to feel that when it suits them or not. I'm not saying either way. It's a question. That's the purpose of this program, Thinking Cypriots. And we all together with our audience can think about these things and hopefully move forward as a society.
I think that's a very important point. I wish that would change, but I don't know. It's a very complicated situation. Abby Hussein has put, Miss Djemal, you described how a lot of Turkish Cypriots feel, I'm sure. And please put your viewpoints here. Thank you very much, Abby Hussein, for, following us and putting your comments. Gulai's put, Yusuf, it should go. If you should go, we should document your experience on Eurogames TV. Yes, good idea, girl. Every minute of it, Yusuf. Can you imagine?
That's because you don't just want to see.
Even when you feel, can you imagine when you do your reactions to certain things? I don't know. What do you think? Yes. No?
You just want to see me step into the curry for the first time.
Oh my God, that would be so lovely. Oh, don't. You're going to actually make me cry now. I went to a coup that my father-in-law was from, yeah? And my children went there. And they were like this, like they didn't know what to do. And then they sat down, and this one brought loads of dolma, right, into the middle. I could see my kids like looking at me like, are we allowed to eat this? Are we not? And I went, yeah, you can eat it. Oh my God, super de lead. Like literally in a second, all the dolmas were gone. I was like, oh my God, these people are going to think I don't feed my children. But they loved it. It was under it was like a veranda, and there was grapes above us, and there was all the oldies like sitting around with their vest tops, should I add, with the tractor a little bit in the distance, and the köpeks and the dogs and the cats wandering about, and my kids are scared of animals normally, and they didn't even bat an eyelid. They just sat there, that dolma. And me and my husband looked at each other, and you know what, like, we didn't have to say anything. It was just that feeling, like, that was it. I felt Turkish Cypriot at that moment. I felt totally Turkish Cypriot. And I thought, thank God, thank you, Allah, that you are able to, give my children this experience. Like, they'll never forget that. It was such a simple thing, eating dolma, under the veranda with loads of old men in vest tops and a tractor. Like, how random is that? But it just felt so Turkish Cypriot. And you walking into your village, I think I will cry if you document that. That will be really emotional for me. I think it'll be wonderful. You'll really enjoy it, and I think you'll be welcomed. But of course, there'll be things that you're disillusioned about. For example, not being able to make a reformed, decision about who runs the country and things like that. That's a real shame. It's sad in my viewpoint.
Can I say something on that, Aisha? Because I think also people's attachment to Cyprus is different depending on what part they're from. So there are certain villages that were more, and we shouldn't always talk about the war because we lived for hundreds of years in peace with different people, and it was a very unfortunate thing, but it's happened. And the reality is it has affected certain villages more than other villages. My village, which is literally where the border goes all the way down and goes back up again, Akın Jalal Origina, that village has been very fair. It was actually the biggest village in North Cyprus before the war, and now there's very few people living in it, a few hundred. There's probably more people from that village living here than there is over there. So I know, and I've that if I was to go to that village, I haven't really got much family over there. Because most of them moved on to Australia or to Britain or to other places, America, etc. So that there isn't a great. See, I feel like when you said that you went to that village and you all had dolma and all the rest of it, and it was the tractor there, I'm sure you've probably got family that are living out there, and you connect with the family that are living there. But if most of your family are over here, it's very different. And if the village,
my husband's family. I don't have much family, but my husband's family, yeah.
Okay, but if the village has changed dramatically since the 60s or the 70s, whenever people came over here, or if it's just been left and it's derelict, it's very difficult to connect back with that. So I feel like there are some villages where there's so many people living there, that people got so many family out there, and then when they go out there, it's like they have good memories of spending time with their family, etc. But because our village was literally on the border, essentially, it's very different for people from Lodogino, I find. And I don't know if there are Lodoginolas that are listening, or people who are from similar codes where they're probably closer to the border, or they'd be more impacted. And there are some villages as well, they don't have a village to go back to.
Yeah, it's a different story. That's
so
right.
When we say it's their land, but is North Cyprus their land? Is that the land where their family were from, their ancestors? So I'm a very I don't know what the word is, maybe cynical, I don't know, but I feel like it's more than a land. I feel like being Cypriot is in here. Yeah. And I feel like you could live on the land. You could live on that land, and you could have lost your identity. You could have lost your morals. You could have lost your values that your great grandparents had.
Very good point.
And you could have stayed in Cyprus and lost all of that. Yet there could be people that have come over here who held on to that firmly and passed that down generation to generation. And those people could be more Cypriot. Yeah, they could be more Cypriot in their heart than people that live in it. And there are people that are living there that I would say have gone off track. You know, they are so different. Yeah, they're so different to how our society was in the 50s, in the 60s, etc. If some people were to go back now and have a look at that, it's a completely different world.
Yeah, it's just geography, isn't it, really? It's geography. But obviously, with everything, because we're human, everything comes from here. Everything comes from within. Our souls, like everything is inside. So 100% I agree with you with that one. It's here that we hold everything, all our memories, all our feelings, our identity. It has to come from within. I agree with that. Land is just geography, but obviously some people feel more passionate about it. Like a person, like for example, from my father's generation, may have the want to go back to Cyprus and build on a certain piece of land. Like my mum has land in her village from when she grew up, and her dream is to go back there and to rebuild her family home. For her, she will find her identity through that action. But not everyone would feel like that. It's just specific to her. It's a personal thing. Like you said, that's how she feels inside, and she's projecting it through going back to that land and building that home again and preserving her family home. But like you said, it comes from within. 100%, I agree with that. We've got so many comments. Fırat, well, I believe Turkish Cypriots, unfortunately, most of them lost their religion. They don't know nothing about being Muslim. This is most heartbreaking thing that's happening to the Cypriots who are living in the UK. This is something that you're working very hard about, Yusuf, at the moment. Yeah.
I don't think it's just those that are living in the UK. I think it's those that are in Cyprus as well. And I think there's some over here in the UK that are more connected with their faith, in fact, than those that are living in Cyprus. You know, there's people that I know in Cyprus that wouldn't want to listen to any of that. You know, that's something that their grandparents or their parents did. But over here, there's something unique that's happened this year. And that is that the Cypriot youth, a lot of the Cypriot youth this year, particularly during Ramadan, with the lockdown and everything, decided to reconnect with their spirituality. And we saw for the first time hundreds upon hundreds of Cypriots, youngsters, fasting for the first time, doing oruç for the first time. You go to Cyprus, there's people that don't do it. So again, I don't think it's attached to the land. I think I feel like sometimes people romanticize the past, that we always sometimes think about the good memories and everything and blah, blah, blah. But then when you go back there, because I've heard a lot of people saying, I would go and live in Cyprus. I want to retire and live there and have my farm and all this. And maybe there are people who would do that and would be very happy. But maybe there are some people who just remember all their childhood memories and all the positive moments. And they feel like, because it happened there, that by going there, that they would regain those memories. But I think if you were to go and actually move out there and live there, and I know people who've done that as well, soon before long, they're on a plane coming back here to London. You know, I know people who've sold up, gone out there, start a new life, or to reclaim their old life.
It's because a couple of years later, they're back. They've probably, when you look at the number of years, they've probably spent more of their life here. they're just reminiscing their childhood maybe. And of course, nostalgia is always a little bit more prettier and nicer. And it's like, you know, like my parents, sometimes they see me turning off my kids and they're like, oh, kız bak kendine, nedir yaptın ama çok güzel çocuklara. And I think, really? You used to tell me off all the time. You've forgotten all done. Like, I couldn't breathe. And they were like, argh. And now it's like, bırak çocuğu yesin chocolate crisp'ciğini yesin biraz, nedir ama yaptın? And I'm like, I wasn't allowed to eat any fast food. I wasn't allowed to have Diet Coke. I had to drink water. Like, my mum was a health freak, and I'm proud of her because she actually did for the Turkish radio, she did a program about, you know, healthy eating and everything. So she was an expert on it. But now she's like, oh, black chocolate, yes, and then it's okay. Like, because it's the grandkids, you know. So people do forget, and they go into the past, I think, and they think it was better, but actually it was much of the same. Most of the things that happen now happened in history. I think what it is now is that the media is quicker. We're able to spread news far more accurately than we did before because social media and technology has moved on. But whatever happened now happened in the past as well. But obviously, hopefully, human rights have improved. Hopefully, we're becoming more informed and we're maturing as a society in general. I don't know. You've got philosophies about that. But yeah, I think much human nature doesn't change too much. I think whatever we do now, we did before. Very quickly, let's move on. Someone's I agree with that, Aisha. We are much more protective here. Yes, Aisha, I got called English when I'm in Cyprus and out and about. I get asked if I'm Italian, German, and French. Farsi.
No, Farsi, Persian.
When we used to go to Cyprus to stay at Dede's house in the village, we were called the Londralers. Yeah, I'm called the Londrala. I can relate to that. I mean, that's it, Londrala. Wow, that's like a proper fusion of Turkish and English. Turkish. I speak a lot of Turkish.
I can't stand Turkish. I can't stand that.
Turks say that to me, and I'm like, when do I ever say hadi git dustbin at? I don't actually use that. I say git çöpe at, actually, and I call a çöp a pipette. And what else? I call a potin ayakkabı. So I use some Turkish terms, but yeah, a lot of people say to me, hadi git dustbin at. And I think I've never used that terminology in my life. But a lot of people seem to think Cypriots say that. I don't know. It could be true. Who knows? What else? Edim. Right. Do you want to read that one? Go on, you can read it.
Identity. The definition varies from person to person and is constantly changing. However, there is a common foundation as to identity. In the same way, the various other identities have a common thread. I know what you mean there, Rim, and it's hard to actually pinpoint what that common foundation actually is, though. What is that criteria? And people will probably have different perceptions or different views on what it is. They will relate to different things. But there is something that binds us together. There is something distinct about us. We are having this show, and most of you are watching this show because we all connect to this Turkish Cypriot culture. We wouldn't be here right now, any of us, if it wasn't for that. So yeah, we all believe in it, but what is it? It's very hard to describe.
It's like air. We can't touch it. We can't see it. It's just there. And I know what Edim's talking about. He's saying, oh, wait till you're 50, or torpil. Torpil is influence. Is he talking about being a beacon in society? I don't know what he means by that.
I don't know. I think we're too slow with the comments. People wrote things like 10 minutes ago. And
Ashkan, I resented growing up as a Turkish Cypriot because my parents were so strict with me, whereas my cousins in Cyprus had more freedom. So true. Hava Mustafa has put, Turkey is our mother country. I agree with that. I think we should be grateful to Turkey. Gulay's put, knowing our identity gives us a sense of belonging, which gives us a positive mental state. And then Suzanne has put a big comment. Go on then, Yusuf, because Gulay just sent me a message. My comment about Turkish citizens deferring their army service till 35. Oh, right. Okay. So that's what she's saying. That comment is about. Basically, you have to either be 50 to not do it, or you need influence. It's true. Influence does make a difference in Cyprus, which isn't the best system either.
No, it's not. Probably one of our flaws as a society. What's the next one? You wanted me to read one, but you haven't pulled it up.
Sorry, I was giving the
That's
wrong
right.
one.
We are unique. My parents came here in the early 50s and brought us up the way they were brought up. Time stood still for them in this country because they envisaged society being the same as it was when they were growing up. I had a huge culture shock when I went to Cyprus when I was 16. My cousins were more modern than kids in this country. I think in hindsight, now it has cemented my Turkish Cypriotism, which I hope I'm passing on to my children and grandchildren. And even though, Susanna Blatt is actually related to me and from the same village as me. And I would say that her upbringing is probably similar to how my mum was probably brought up, and my Taser and my Daya. And I mean, my mum wasn't allowed to get on a bus. Forget it. Forget it. That just wasn't allowed because.
Yeah.
And there's things that are allowed now, and it's like people think, oh, my mum and dad are really strict, and I'm like, really? Because I don't think you know what strict is. And it's like, oh, I'm only allowed to be at a birthday party until 1 a.m. and then I have to get, and then I have to come home. And it's like, well, from what I've heard,
look, you could go to the birthday party, mate.
Exactly. And I was
standing at the door watching me at the birthday party.
I was actually brought up very strict as well, I would say. And if my mum does watch this, yes, you did bring me up very strict. Because I'm very grateful for that, because I feel like that gave me, I think that gave me a very good grounding. And she always says to me, "Bir gün sizin de çocuklarınız olacak." Yeah. And I think that's a fair point. One day when I have children, I will know how difficult it is.
They get soft. You're going to see. My parents are so like, to the grandkids now. But I'm like that.
I think that's what she means. One day I will have children and I will be strict.
I'm like,
because it's out of love. They do it out of love, right? They're protective out of love. They want what's best for us.
I have to protect my children. If I'm like that, I've cut, If I don't sort them out, then who? Like, I have to, and I think I have. Like I said, manners for me are important. When we have social gatherings, my children have to go and greet everybody and sit with me and be part of the family. I don't want them isolated. They're my everything. They're my everything. So I don't know how else to describe it. I think we all feel the same. You feel like you have to protect them. And I suppose it is something that we pass on to generations. I tell you what else is very thing, and I think this is of my mum's generation, and they still do it, is, like, say we have butter, they won't get rid of the container, they'll wash it.
I know what you're on about.
Walk around and, like, pick it up and throw it. And yet, like, is that because of what happened to them back home, and the fact that they had to ration and they had to move to this country? It's like everything, they don't take anything for granted. Everything has dare in their eyes, like, and I love that. That makes me feel very humble that my parents have given me that understanding that you've got to not take anything for granted and be thankful, and count your blessings. You got your tough days and you got your good days, but count your blessings. And like I started working at a very young age. I had a part-time job at the local library, like my parents, and yet my parents, gave me piano lessons, ballet lessons. Don't get me wrong, I was spoiled, but at the same time, if I wanted something, I was taught you go and get a job and you save up for it and you work for it and you understand, what it is to save up for something. And I think that, again, is something that we must pass on to our children, because we're living in such a fast food, fast life, disposable lifestyle now, that we've got to make sure that our children understand, the dare of things, the importance of things, and always go back to the containers.
You just reminded me of something, because I remember opening up the fridge and I'd see like a ice cream container, like dondurma, and I'd get so happy and open up, it's dolma or fırınma on the inside. Oh, where's the ice cream? Oh, brilliant.
I think it is. It's the fact that we've come from another country, and it's, again, preserving that need to hold on to what you have, because I think of what's happened. And, you know, without us knowing it, we've inherited those feelings. We may not be going through, but we've inherited it, I think. And that's what, again, we have in common with being Turkish Cypriot in Britain, is that we've got that identity of being, you know, moving from one country to another, really, I guess, is the only way to describe it. Ertan's put, oh, no, Hussein Hodges put, great show again. Thank you very much, Hussein Hodges, for always supporting us. And again, another amazing, amazing person. I always say, like, he's writing his memoirs at the minute, and we need to get it published in the British Library, because he's one of the key characters that will, you know, keep our memories going. And, you know, for generations to come, a lot of his writings, I think, will be read by people, you know, who will be curious about our culture. So he's a very, very important person. So thank you very much for supporting us. Ertan Karpaz has put, "Of ya sustum artık." Is that like a mannerism? Is that like what we say in our culture?
No, I think it was when you were speaking highly of him, he was responding like that. But no, Ertan, like you do great things in the community. So
yeah. No, he does.
Yeah.
I love them. The banter. Hussein Hodge has to come back to my house and do his stories again. I loved it. It was so much fun. Eddie was given a smiley face. Hang on a minute. I've lost where I am now. All right. So true. Hussein Hodge has put, what do you think of Turks and Kurds from Turkey living in London? Well, yeah, I mean, again, I'm sure it's the same for them. It's an identity thing. I mean, obviously, we'd have to get somebody who's Kurdish to come on and talk about that a little bit more. Yeah. Edim's put, yes, Ayşen, you need to find your own identity, 100%. Hussein Hodges put the unique Londra. I can't even say it.
No. He said the unique Lurigadis. That's
Lurigadis about your village.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. That's very true, Yusuf Ahmed. I think when you were talking about your village, Hussein has put, there is a saying, no representation without taxation. Hence, we are not allowed to vote in North Cyprus elections, which is a correct political decision. Oh, right. Okay. So, because we don't pay our taxes. I don't know what you think about that, Yusuf.
Well, in Turkey, if you don't, if you're a Turkish citizen, if you have like the kimlik card and you live here, you can still vote. And to be honest with you, if that is our country, if that is our nation, if these words that are being said are true, then do we not get a say in who's running our country? If these are the words that people are using, I think it's food for thought. I'm not saying that we should or we shouldn't. But at the same time, I think if I have children and they have children and then they want to go to Cyprus one day, and I give them Turkish names, they're going to have to spend a day or two or on a hot day rushing around trying to get a piece of paper to stay in the country or to have a holiday there or to experience their culture. Now there's different views on this, and I appreciate different people's views, but at the same time, I know a lot of people that don't go as a result of that, because it's a lot of fasaria, it's a lot of hassle, right? To have to go there and do all that stuff. For what? For money? Is it for money? I don't know. I mean, this is what I'm hearing, and if that is the case, that's quite sad, because if you think of it more longer term, if you look at it more of an economic level, if you made it as easy as possible for people to go there, people would be spending their money there and their economy would be boosted, and they'd actually be a lot better off than the small amount of money that they're going to be getting from that anyway. This is a very political point, and I'm not close enough to the detail to understand the reasons for and against. What we are thinking of doing is perhaps having a session on this with the right people, so that they can discuss it. Because I'm not going to talk about something that I don't know about. But I have to say, but I could talk about my experience, my personal experience. Someone being born here, that has made it more difficult and more a hurdle to go into that country. Da öyle yaparlar ki insanlar istemez gitsinler kendi memleketine.
Yeah, it's
and I think that's a problem
about it. And I don't know about taxation. Okay, so we don't pay taxes, but we invest a lot of money. A lot of people who live in this country have got properties out there. That's why they have their Türk kimlik. The only reason why I got my Turkish kimlik, KKTC kimlik, is because I have property out there. Now, isn't that an investment? And I pay bills and all sorts of things. So, I mean, yeah, it's something that we need to discuss, like you said, with the right individuals. But this is our viewpoint. Our viewpoint could change if we're convinced otherwise. But I mean, I think it would be great if we could vote. It would be a good option for us if we could. Right, I've been told we've got our last 5 minutes, so we're going to have to go through the comments so that everybody has their say. Suzanne Hanum has put, my husband and I go to Luricina every year and stay in the village for a few days. My dad has a house there, even though not many people, but the people that are there are more traditional, and there is that feeling of what Aisha was talking about. I love going to my village. Oh, that's a positive, Yusuf, for you. Me to love my village, Hussein Hoja has put. Erim has put, do you have to be a follower of Islam to have a strong Turkish Cypriot identity? What do you, Aishan and Yusuf, think? I personally feel it's not a key element, especially now in 2020. No, I don't think it's a key element. I think we are very cultural anyway, and we have a lot of traditions within our culture. But certainly, in the last couple of months since I've been doing the Ramadan program as well, I've learned a lot more about my religion, which has been really nice. It's been a nice experience for me that I've gained more knowledge. Knowledge is always a good thing. So that's my answer to that one. I don't know how you feel, Yusuf, about that one.
I think it's a really good point, actually. And I don't say that all Turkish Cypriots are Muslim, because they're not. I think the majority are or come from a Muslim background. But there are Turkish Cypriots who are Christian or atheist or of other faiths. And we need to be mindful of that. Mm-hmm. I think as a culture, our culture is highly influenced by Islam.
Yeah.
And there's certain things that we spoke about, keeping your house clean. Mm-hmm. That's not something that's unique to Islam, but it's something that is strongly emphasized within the Islamic tradition. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a saying that cleanliness is half of faith. And this is something that has been brought into the very core of our culture as a result of that. There's many things in our culture which we don't realize have Islamic origins, and we just follow them, but they are in fact influenced by Islam. But of course, anyone can believe whatever they want.
Yeah, and there are Turkish Cypriots, may I add, that are Christian. I know Turkish Cypriots that are Christian. So it's not that we're saying that every Turkish Cypriot is Muslim. It just happens to be that my particular identity is that I am Muslim, and I've learned a little bit more about it recently. But of course, it doesn't mean it's true of everybody. Of course, you know, like I said, we're quite a big community, and we have variations within the community.
And I think also it's like saying a lot of people associate England with Christianity. How many people are actively following Christianity? But yeah. you know, the Church of England was founded by in this country, in England. There's a lot of history with Christianity here. Yeah. So it's the same from a Cypriot perspective. It's not every single Cypriot is necessarily Muslim, but yeah.
But we've got a huge connection with it, obviously. Jansef Jamal said, you're throwing off those inhibitions about speaking Turkish, Aisha. I am. Especially with beside me. Yeah, he's making me feel more confident. Hussein, I'll just put, very true, but the culture is heavily influenced by the faith, and we need to preserve it as much as we can, obviously. Hussein Hojo, we agree with that wholeheartedly. Rensis has put, I can only speak Turkish. And Turkly. Atsoy's put, hello from Australia. It's so cool to see you guys live. Wow, I've got people from Australia. We've got a lot of Turkish Cypriots in Australia, by the way, actually. We've got a huge community there. So it'd be wonderful to connect. I did do an international program during COVID, and we connected to Austria, I believe it was, Australia, Cyprus. It was amazing. It was amazing. It was a lovely program. It'd be wonderful to do something like that. Sultan has put, hi. Hussein Hoja has said, one of the best shows so far. Thank you very much. Sultan, is it they were recycling?
This is in relation to the Dondurma box and
yeah, they were reselling.
Very fair point.
Exactly. Hussein Hodges put, I pay tax in Cyprus and national insurance as well. There you go. And Abby Hussein has the strongest Cypriots living today are the ones who lived through 1964 to 1974 in Cyprus.
I think those that live.
Program, isn't it?
That's a whole different program. Yeah. I mean, those that live there had a certain experience and lived a certain experience. I think people that came here as well, they also had difficult experiences and experienced difficulties. But that is a whole nother program.
It is, but I tell you what, I think both of us are very proud. I mean, my grandparents came here, so I'm like third generation, would I be, here? But I'm so proud of my grandparents and the stories that have been told to me about my family, and you're very proud of it. And I think that's why I've always felt very Turkish Cypriot, because I've had those connections. But it is a personal thing, identity. But I feel very happy and proud that I've reconnected with my community. I feel very fortunate that I'm able to do these programs and outreach so many people out there. And I'm forever grateful for, you know, all the viewers and all the comments. I really enjoy what I do. Yusuf?
I'm also very humbled, privileged, honoured to be on these shows, to share with my community, because it is my community. I do feel part of it, despite the fact I haven't been to Cyprus. And yeah, I one day. And yeah, I really like this show that we're doing, Thinking Cypriots. I hope you do too as an audience. This is your show, so please do continue to engage with us. Let us know some questions or some issues that you want us to tackle as well. We have got a few ideas and we have got the next few planned, but please do give us some feedback, continue to tune in, and we're looking forward to exploring these questions with you going forward.
Yeah, I mean, please tune in next week, and we're going to post the question out on our page too, on our Facebook page. Normally on a Monday, we advertise the program and we put the question out. Please, people, if you could put your comments below it before the program, we can actually sort of incorporate that into our program from before. But obviously, it's great that, you know, people are interacting with us live. And like Yusuf said, this is your program. We thought very long and hard about our title and everything. And we like the idea of Thinking Cypriots, because this includes not just Turkish Cypriots, but Cypriots in general. Let's point that out as well. So it's open to the whole community of Cypriots. So that's really important. Suzanne Hanum's put, great show. Thank you, both of you. Amazing, mashallah. And Sultan's put, they are brilliant shows. Thank you. And Hayal Hanum's put hearts. And Edem's put, well done. All great show. Identity needs to be completed again. Yes, definitely. I think we can carry on talking about this. There's so many factions to identity. We could do another 5 more programs or maybe more about it. And, you know, like we said, very open to comments. Please put your comments from beforehand. We're going to be doing this on a weekly basis. So it is the audience's show. Abby Hussein has put, as usual, Yura Genç is leading the way. How to teach and listen to Turkish Cypriots community. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much for all your support. Thank you, Abby Hussein, for always tuning in and for your support. Hussein, what would you like to say at the end, and we can close the program?
Hussein or Yusuf?
Sorry, did I say Hussein? I'm getting tired. Had a blonde moment there. I forgot your name. Yusuf.
Okay. Yusuf.
Very dearly named, by the way. Your name carries a lot of weight. Beautiful name.
Thank you.
Yes.
My closing remarks are a massive thank you to everyone that tunes in. Please do share this with other people that you think would be interested in this conversation as well. It's incumbent upon all of us to engage with our wider community, our friends, our families as well, and hold on to that kinship, hold on to those ties, do not cut them. And it's shows like this, it's discussions like this, where we can all come together and we can think. And we have problems as a society as well. And some of those we're going to be addressing over the coming weeks. And we need to address those as a community, as a society. And we're touching these at a very high level. As Aisha just mentioned, we could go into so much depth with all of these. But we thought, let's just touch some of them and focus more on breadth rather than depth. But your input, your comments, your questions, your points are what make this show. And finally, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Aisha for all the shows that she's doing on Eurogames TV, and the big impact that's happening on a lot of people in our community who are able to reconnect, who are able to tap into their Turkish Cypriot identity, and that's really important, shouldn't ever be overlooked. So thank you.
And although obviously it's very important to preserve our language and speak Turkish, I feel it's very important also to do programs in English so that we can access the wider Cypriot community. So hence why I've always been very passionate and started doing the English programs on Eurogames TV, and I'm really proud to be one of the people that started that. And I think it's important that we embrace our British culture as well, so that we can access as many people as we possibly can. I mean, there's more comments coming in. An informative watch from a half Greek Cypriot. Keep up the good work. Fantastic. And like I said, that's why our program is called Thinking Cypriots, because it's encompassing all Cypriots. Let's make that point very clear. We thought very carefully about that, and that's why we came up with that title, because we want to include everybody from our community, not just Turkish, but Greek as well. And Susie has put, thank you guys, very interesting show. Bless you so much. We've gone over time. Thank you very much to all our viewers. Please follow our question that will be posted on Monday. Put your comments. Thank you very much for watching us and for your support. This is your program, so please put your viewpoints across to us, and we'll try and tackle all the different topics within the next few weeks. That's it from us. From Eurogames TV, have a very good evening. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye.
Welcome, we are Bologna, calling newlyweds or those looking for a new bedroom set. Venti 5-door bedroom set is not only glamorous and modern, but has storage inside the bed. This bedroom set was £3,700, now £2,395. Bologna, we are here for you.